All right, and what is up, guys? Welcome to another edition of the Fight Forecast. Um, Sorry for the people at DFI that me and Dave were not able to do something last night together. Internet just wasn't working the way that I was hoping that it would. But lucky enough, Dave was able to do some himself, and now I'm going to do some myself. That way, you guys still get the content that you guys pay for, that you guys deserve. So I'm just basically going to break down each fight here, give you a little bit of information about what my opinion is when it comes to Draftkings purposes. If you guys have any questions, absolutely put them in the war room. Hit me up on Twitter, hit Dave up on Twitter. But yeah, let's get to breaking down these fights and hopefully making you guys some money. So the first fight we got here, we got Gustavo Lopez versus Anthony Burchak. I think that this is definitely a fight Burchak should be able to win. One thing that does worry me about him is watching tape on him. It does seem that when he throws strikes, sometimes he can get a little bit wild when he throws strikes. So that definitely is something to watch and, maybe pivot on a little bit to Lopez if you're doing multiple entry GPP games. Lopez really just doesn't throw very much, though. His striking skills really have not impressed me from what I've seen. He also doesn't have the best takedown defense. Granted, he fought Merab his last fight. Everyone is going to have a shitty takedown defense against Merab. But still, that is a worry here. So I do slightly lean Burchak. I think that this is his fight to lose. I would say only put him in GPP. Same with Lopez. Neither of these fighters are cash plays per se. And I think that goes for the slate in general, honestly. I think that it's more so a GPP slate than a cash slate. Not to say that you can't make a good cash lineup, because you certainly can. But I think as a whole that this is a GPP slate, and honestly a fairly easy one to break down from my opinion. The next fight we got here, we got Marcos de Lima versus Alexander Romanov. And I am very, very high on Romanov. I have been since, the moment that I first started watching tape on him. I think this guy is just a complete stud. He has great takedown offense, great ground and pound, great submission. This guy just ticks off every box across the board. We saw what he could do in his last fight, where he scored, I believe it was 100 and like 40 some odd points or something like that in a 2-round win. So this guy, has all the skills to be able to win the fight and win the fight decisively and score you a good amount of points. I think that he's going to have no issue at all doing that again in this fight. He's my favorite fighter on this slate by far. He should more than likely be the highest owned fighter as well by far. But there's a reason for that. I mean, this is a guy that, for a heavyweight, you normally don't see them go for takedowns very often. This is a guy that averages over 6 takedowns per fight. You don't get that type of advantage anywhere else on this card. And on top of that, he is facing a guy in De Lima who only has a 36% takedown defense. De Lima is going to get taken down early. He's going to get taken down often. Romanov is going to be able to do whatever he wants in this fight. He's either going to win via ground and pound or he's going to win via submission. I think this is a guy you have to lock into your lineups. Cash, GPP, or across the board. Lock him into your lineups and feel comfortable in doing that. De Lima, fade. He ain't going to do anything. I mean, if you're playing 150 lineups, maybe put him in one or two just, in case. But when it comes down to it, for the majority of us who are playing at most 20 lineups, you want Romanov in a good amount of those, and you want De Lima in none of those. Plain and simple. So the next fight we got Darren Elkins versus Luis Garagora. So Elkins is surprisingly on a 4-fight losing streak. Granted, I feel that he won his last fight. He ended up losing via decision, but it was a pretty close fight. I think he needs to win this fight. If he doesn't, yeah, he's a well-known name, but there comes a point in time in your career where if you're not winning fights, you're not going to be in the UFC anymore. So I think that he does have to win this fight. Elkins lands and absorbs around 3.25 strikes per minute. Garagor lands 3.75, absorbs 2.22. So he does absorb a little less amount of strikes. Elkins does land almost 2.5 takedowns per fight, though. And with both of the fighters only having about a 50% takedown defense, I think that is going to be Elkins' path to victory. I don't necessarily think that he scores a crazy amount. If you look at his career, he just, he, for the most part, is a 60, 70, 80 point scorer when it comes to DraftKings purposes. I think he's a very good play for cash at his price point of 8,700. But for GPP, I don't necessarily think he's going to get the finish. My opinion is that this fight goes to decision, that he wins via decision. And like I said, that he scores you 70 to 80 points. Nothing to sneeze at, but at the same time, more than likely, it's not going to be on the optimal lineup when it comes to GPPs. Garagor, I would just fade. And I don't necessarily have an exact reason why I think you should fade him. Like I said, he does land almost 4 strikes per minute. He only absorbs 2 strikes per minute. I just think that this is a big step up for him. I think that Elkins is going to be able to do what he needs to do to get the victory. And I think in general it'll be a fairly low scoring fight. So there's no real purpose to play the dog in this fight, just because it ain't going to get you anywhere. And in GPP, if you're not getting at least 10x from your fighters, you're not going to have a chance. And I don't see Garagor getting 10 or 11x this fight. So yeah, that's my opinion on that one. Next, we got Max Griffin versus Ramez Brahimaj. I'm sure I butchered the shit out of that. But I like Ramaz in this fight. He's actually my favorite dog of this slate. Watching him, he has very good striking ability, but his striking ability is meant to get the takedown. He likes to go for the takedown early and often from the tape that I saw. And once he gets the takedown, he's very good at finishing the fight on the ground. Griffin only has a 66% takedown defense, and while he has fought some better competition than Ramaz, I just think that this is Ramaz's fight to lose. I think that he has the skill to be able to get the fight down to the ground and in order to get the submission victory. So I definitely think that if you're looking for a dog at the slate, that he is probably your best bet. He will be pretty high owned. Just because when it comes to this slate, honestly, outside of him and maybe, one or two others that are potential if you like them, I think that Ramaz is definitely your best bet to get a win out of a dog this week. So he will be very high owned, but, I think that you can eat that percentage and feel pretty comfortable doing it. Griffin, if you want to put him in a GPP lineup or two, he does land almost 4 strikes per minute. So, if he does somehow pull out the win, it could be a high scoring victory. I personally don't see it. I think that Ramaz, like I said, will be able to get the takedown, will be able to secure the victory via submission. And, for 7.7, he's definitely someone that you want in your lineup. So next we got Ronnie Barcelos versus Taiya. This is a pretty big step up for Taiya. One, I don't necessarily think that he's ready for. Barcelos has fought some very well-known fighters in the UFC and even previous to that. Barcelos lands as well as absorbs about 4.5 strikes per minute. Taiya lands and eats about 2.5 strikes per minute. I think what Barcelos has that he's going to lean on, though, is his takedown offense. He lands 2.31 takedowns per fight, and Taiya only has a 63% takedown defense. I think that this is Barcelos' fight to lose. He's just the better all-around fighter. The one thing that does worry me, like I said, that he does absorb 4.5 strikes per minute, and Taiya does have some power in his hands. So if you want to, go crazy and put Taiya in one or two GPP lineups, I'm not necessarily against it. Just because, like I said, the dogs on this slate really are not the greatest. So, it wouldn't hurt to put him in a couple GPP lineups just to see if it sticks. I think in general, though, this is Barcelos' fight to lose, and he should score pretty good, in my opinion. At 9,100, I think that he's safe for GPP for sure. And cash, he's not my favorite cash play. I mean, you can certainly put him in there, but I think he's more so a GPP play than a cash play in this slate. But yeah, I think that he does have the potential to win via submission. But even if he doesn't get the win via submission, I think that he'll land enough strikes and land enough takedowns to still score pretty good and give you good value. All right, so next we got Trevin Giles versus Bevon Lewis. I will be honest, I have no fucking clue about this fight. It's just one of those fights that really nothing at all stands out to me. On paper, they are pretty similar fighters. Giles lands 3.61 strikes per minute. Lewis lands a little over 4. Giles absorbs 1.75 strikes per minute. Lewis absorbs a little over 2.5. They're pretty similar fighters, honestly. Neither of them have really done anything in the UFC. They fought some solid competition, but they just haven't done anything. So, I mean, I slightly lean Giles in this fight, but honestly, I don't think that this is a fight that you're really going to want to roster too much. I think that this is a fight that, maybe you have in a couple lineups, but really, I wouldn't at all be surprised if this is a boring decision fight and the victory, the winner gets maybe 60, 70 points. So, I mean, it's not something I would go very crazy on at all. I'd maybe have it in a couple lineups if you're multi-entering. But outside of that, I wouldn't really touch this fight, honestly, just because it's way too close of a fight. It could go either way, honestly. Anything could happen this fight. But I tend to believe that it'll be a low-scoring, decision-based victory for whoever wins it. So the next fight we got here, Giga Chikadze versus James Simmons. So Chikadze is the highest priced fighter of this slate. Now, that worries me a little bit. Just due to the fact that if you look at his history in the UFC, well, he does win. He does it in a certain way. He has not won a fight via finish, I don't believe, since he's came to the UFC. Now, he does have it in his record before he came to the UFC, absolutely. But generally, he just, he's a 70 to 80 point scorer who gets you the win. But at 9,300, I have a hard time getting to him. The one thing that I do like a little bit is, from what I saw on tape, Simmons is a lot lower tier fighter than GJ Jakaze. This is a huge fight and jump up for Simmons. And Simmons has good power, but when he throws it, man, he throws it very sloppily. And I think that that's something that GJ Chikaze is just going to be able to kind of pick apart, honestly. So I do think that there is the potential for the finish in this fight. I think Chikaze has the power, has the kicks and punches to be able to potentially get a finish this fight. Just because I think that the way Simmons throws it, it's very, very sloppy. On the other side, I probably wouldn't play Simmons much outside of maybe one lineup, just as a what if type thing. I think this is a pretty easy fight for Jakaze, honestly. Just for GPP, though. I would not play him in cash personally, just because if he doesn't get the finish, he's probably going to score 70 or 80 points. That's just, what he does in the UFC. He wins fights, but he doesn't score a whole lot. So if he doesn't get the finish, he's not someone that at 9,300 you want in your lineup. I would say stick to him for multi-entry GPP games. But outside of that, I honestly I wouldn't touch him, just because he's going to be way too boom or bust. He's either, like I said, 70 points, 80 points, or he'll score 120. But that's not a risk that you want to take on cash, especially at being the highest price fighter on the slate. So the next fight we got here is one that I think has the potential to be fight of the night. We got Claudia Godelia versus Oksana Yan. Now, lately, Godelia just honestly has not really been going for takedowns as much as she used to. If you look at her fight metrics, it says that she lands 3.13 takedowns per fight. But I honestly, I think that this is Yan's fight to lose. I just think that all around, she is a little better fighter. She herself does land a little over one takedown per fight, does have the better takedown defense at 70%. And she also lands a lot. She lands almost 7 strikes per minute. So I think that, she's going to be able to pick Godelia apart on the feet, land a couple takedowns. She is one of my favorite plays this slate, especially when it comes to cash. I think that you can safely play her in both, honestly, but in cash, I really like her at 8,300. And I like Godelia, honestly, in cash as well. Just because I think that she's consistent. I think that she, even if she loses, should be able to score your 50, 60 points. So for 7,900, I don't think that's too bad in cash, but $400 more, I'd probably just go to Yan and get that hopeful victory. So yeah, I'd play Yan in both GPP, cash. I think she's safe across the board. Godelia, more so cash than GPP. I just don't necessarily think the upside is there for the GPP play when it comes to Godelia. All right. So next we got Ian Heinisch versus Brendan Allen. And this is another fight right up there with the Godelia fight that I think has the potential to be fight of the night. These fighters just across the board, just like the Giles fight, very consistent across the board. Both have done very well in the UFC. Heinisch lands 3.62 strikes per minute, eats 2.85. Allen lands eats around 2.6. So a little better there for Heinisch. Heinisch lands as well as Allen, a little over one takedown per fight. Allen's closer to 1.5. But Heinisch does have a little bit better takedown defense at 62%. I think that this is Heinisch's fight to lose, personally. I just think Allen's biggest weapon is his submission game. Heinisch has only ever been submitted once. So I think that Heinisch does have the better chance to win this fight. Now, it's going to be a very close one. There's a reason that it's, priced at 7,800 to 8,400. But I think Heinisch is probably my second favorite dog play this slate. Someone that I definitely would have in some lineups. I think he's a little bit more of a cash play, honestly, than a GPP play, though. Just because if you look at his history, for the most part, you know what you're going to get out of him if he gets a win. It's 80 to 90 points. Generally, he's not much higher than that. But I'm not against putting him in some GPP lineups just because when it comes to dogs this slate, there really is not much. So I'm definitely not against playing Heinisch in some GPP. Allen, I'd go strictly GPP just because I think that, if he wins, it'll somehow be via submission. And if that happens, then he's going to score good. But if it doesn't happen, I think that Heinisch should be able to control the fight for the most part. And Allen will probably only score maybe 40 points tops. And in that case, I like Yana a lot more for $100 less. So I would definitely stick to GPP for Allen. Heinisch, you can play both, but I lean cash with him. So the next fight we got Andre Arlovsky versus Tanner Bozier. Surprisingly, Arlovsky has, looked a lot better as of late, but he's still not necessarily winning fights. He's not getting knocked out, which is good because before, this, his chin was absolutely shot. But, he, outside of Lins, who is garbage and shouldn't even be in the UFC, and Rothwell, who is good, but he's Ben Rothwell. Nothing amazing there. Arlovsky just hasn't won fights as of late. I think that this is definitely Bozier's fight to lose. He lands more strikes per minute. They both absorb about the same. But I just think Bozier has the better power. I wouldn't be surprised if Arlovsky gets knocked out. That would never surprise me with him. The guy's been knocked out 11 times in his career. But yeah, I think that this is definitely a GPP fight across the board. I would probably only play Arlovsky if you're multi-entering 20 plus. Just because, if he wins via decision, he's not going to score very well. If you look at his last, couple fights that he's won via decision, they just haven't been that great. If he does lose, same thing. He just doesn't throw really enough or land enough to make it worth playing him in single entry GPP or cash. Bozier, while he still is definitely GPP mainly, I think that you can play him in cash if you want, if you feel confident that he is going to get that knockout. even if he doesn't get the knockout, he should still be able to land enough strikes to score fairly well. But at 8,900, there's a couple other people around his price point, like Romanov, like Santos, that I like a little bit better than Bossier. So, I'd probably pivot to one of those in cash if you're going to play him. But GPP, it's definitely worth putting him in there, because I think out of those three fighters, Romanov, Santos, Bossier will be the lesser-owned fighter. So, it's never a bad thing to pivot to lesser-owned fighters when it comes to GPP slates and try to get that advantage there. So now we got the main event of the night here. We got Thiago Santos versus Glover Teixeira. Santos is coming off, getting both of his ankles completely, basically done up again because he got so messed up in that Jones fight. This is his first fight back since then. Most people think that he won, that Jones fight, or at least came pretty damn close. Teixeira has looked a lot better as of late, just like Arlovsky. But at the end of the day, if you look at some of the fighters that he's beat recently, they're fighters that are either over the hill or don't have very good cardio. I don't think that's the case with Santos. Santos went 5 rounds with who some say is maybe the greatest MMA fighter of all time. And potentially won that fight. So I don't think that is the case with Santos. I think that Teixeira is going to struggle with Santos. I think that his power is just too good. I think that his striking ability is just too good. So, if you look at his fights that Teixeira has won, he struggles early and then comes back. I don't think that he's going to be able to do that against Santos at all. I think that Santos is going to win this fight potentially by finish, even if he doesn't get the finish, so that he's going to be able to score well enough in a decision victory to make it worth it at 8,800. Teixeira, if you want to play him in some multi-entry GPP, I can understand that, because there is that risk where Santos is coming back from surgery that, maybe he's not 100% ready. Maybe he's going to get kicked in that leg and it's just going to buckle. So I definitely can understand the play. I probably will have a couple Teixeira myself, but in general, I lean Santos. I think that Santos is a safe play both in GPP and cash. Teixeira, I don't think that he's a bad cash play at 7,400. Don't think he's a bad GPP play either. I just like Santos better. But yeah, that's my opinion, is that Santos wins this fight. More than likely via knockout, probably 3rd or 4th round. So yeah, guys, that's the card. All in all, honestly, I think, watching tape on this slate, breaking down the fights, I think it's a pretty clear cut slate, honestly. I don't think that there's a lot of really questionable fights like there has been recently on some slates. I think that it's more so a GPP slate, but, definitely you can make an okay cash lineup as well. Yeah, so I mean, hopefully what I think here, what Dave thinks here is correct. And we see you guys in the green. That's what this is all about. It's all about making that money for us, making that money for you guys. So if you have any questions, absolutely, like I said earlier, hit me up on Twitter. The link is right there in the video. Or post them in the war room. Hit Dave up. Hit me on the Slack. Same with Dave. So if you have any questions, definitely let us know. The slate locks at 7 p.m. tonight, so it is a late lock. So we will be there to answer all your questions until then. But yeah, enjoy the podcast and let's get that money, guys.